Hi there and welcome back to Digital Juice Training. Today we're going to be looking at a juicer plugin called PowerSCALE, which is designed for use with the DJ Fonts family. And before I go into the finer details of the advantages of using this tool and some of its more complicated uses, I'm going to show you exactly how it works. One of the things you have to understand is this box that's surrounding the text, and right now, which is the exact same size as our layout, is the text bounding box, and that defines where the text can appear on your canvas. Right now our canvas is set to an HD PAL NTSC size of 1920 by 1080, 72 dpi. But let's say, for example, I want to use this same text on a much smaller project for the web or for an SD resolution. I'm going to enter in some new canvas sizes here and you'll see what happens to the text. If I enter, let's say, 800 by 600, you'll see that the canvas size has decreased, but the text bounding box is the same as it was before, because changing the canvas size is not changing my text size. So what PowerSCALE allows you to do is easily scale this text down to a size that will fit in your new layout. And to do that, I just need to come over here to PowerSCALE, which appears here when you install this plugin. It'll appear here under your Format Text panel. Just click on it and we'll go into PowerSCALE mode. And by just moving our slider down, it will scale down our text bounding box and the text contained inside of it. Now you can also select the corners of the bounding box and drag in order to scale the text. And there are a couple of commands that you can use to speed or slow down the scaling. If you click on the control button, it will change your size in smaller increments. You'd have more control over your scaling if you press the control key. And if you press the shift key, it'll increase more quickly and decrease more quickly, so that you have less control but more speed in your scaling. And then once you've got your text to the size you want within your new canvas, you just hit apply and you're back into your regular layout. Now, one thing you'll notice is your text bounding box is not necessarily going to fit on your canvas. And if you go up here to reset the bounding box to fit the canvas, sometimes that will be fine, but you may see some changes if you do that when you've got text that's coming off the canvas or that has extra spaces. So just be careful when you're clicking on that it may change your text. Now, that being said, there's no reason that you have to reset your bounding box to fit to be the exact same size as the canvas. As long as your text is within the canvas, your bounding box for your text can be way outside. It doesn't matter. When you hit render, it will only render what's visible on the canvas. Now I'm going to go back here into PowerSCALE again, and I'm going to show you some other features. And one of those is that when you want to apply your changes, you can double click inside the bounding box and that will bring you back out to the regular preview panel just like before. And the other thing is that PowerSCALE is not just for scaling down, obviously it's also for scaling up. And the maximum that it will allow you to scale up is to the original size of the biggest letter in your layout, which is 2000 pixels. So let's say, for example, I want to change my layout here to 2000 by 2000 pixels. And I want my text to fit inside here. I'm just going to scale it up until it fits. Adjust it just a little bit and double click inside and it's back in my regular preview panel. So your next question is bound to be, how is PowerSCALE different from just changing the font size of your text layout? And in many cases, you will just be able to change the font size to your new canvas size. For example, for this layout here, it's currently 885 points on a 2000 by 2000 pixel canvas. I can just scale it down to 184 points, change my canvas size to 800 by 600 and reset my bounding box, and then I just scale this back up a little bit and we've got pretty much the same layout. Now The thing is that the more complex the juicer gets, with new features like save layout and being able to rotate and jumble your letters and make your letters different sizes and change the baseline, you're going to want to do more of your text layout within the juicer. And once you start changing attributes of individual letters in your layout, then it becomes harder to scale up or down with a layout that you've spent some time on. So that's where PowerScale comes in, and you'll really see the power of it. I'm going to go back to the 2000 by 2000 canvas, and I'm going to show you the kind of layout I'm talking about. For example, if I take the word power and make it a lot smaller than the word scale, and then I take individual letters and just raise the baseline. Now I'm not doing anything using any of the new plugins. This is stuff that's built into the juicer currently. And just that little bit, and then adjust my kerning between letters, and maybe scale up a little bit from there. Scale up the word scale. And I've got a new layout with just a little bit of complexity. It's really not very complex, but to recreate it at a smaller size will take you a little bit of time. It'll take the same amount of time it did to initially create it. Now, what about if you want to use this layout at this size and then convert it to a smaller size? Well, I'm going to show you how long it takes doing it the old way with just changing font size, and then I'll show you how PowerScale would do it. First of all, I'm going to scale it down using font size. Now I know I'm going to go to about 800 by 600, so that's less than half the width, so I'm going to change scale, and I'm going to scale it right down to about that size. Then I'm going to take power. Now luckily all the letters in power are the same size, so I'm able to select the whole word at once. Otherwise it would be even more complicated. And then I'm going to change the leading, tighten it up. And now I'm going to come over here and change the layout size to 800 by 600. Reset my bounding box, and I still have some scaling to do. Take the word scale, scale it down even more. Take the word power, scale it down even more. Now as you can see, my look is really not what it was before. Everything is kind of off. Oh, and I just went to adjust the baseline, and of course I lost my baseline shift on my individual letters. So I'll just go back in there and recreate that. And in fact, it probably would be easier just to start from scratch at the smaller canvas size and recreate this layout. But as I said, this is a relatively simple layout. Just imagine if it was more complex. So now I have a look that's similar to the one I had that was bigger, but I really don't know if the proportions are the same, whether the leading and the spacing are the same, but it's close. Now let me show you the whole process using PowerScale. Okay, so I'm back up on a 2000 by 2000 pixel canvas, and I've got a logo that's similar to what I had before. I'm going to take this and I'm going to use PowerScale to scale it down to 800 by 600. Now I could go straight and just change my canvas size and then use PowerScale, but I'm going to scale this down a little bit first so that it's more manageable. So I'm going to go to PowerScale, and I'm just going to slide my slider, and automatically the layout gets scaled exactly as it looked at the larger size. I'm going to make it quite small, put it up here in the corner, double click, and it's back in my regular preview panel. And I'm going to come over here, change my canvas size to 800 by 600, and boom, it's back, and I can come back into PowerScale to scale it up a little bit more, double click, reset my bounding box, and boom, I have the exact same look at a smaller size. Okay, we've talked about how you can save time by not having to reformat your text layout for different sizes. You save it as a layout and then you can scale it up using PowerScale to whatever size you need. But there's also time savings because you don't have to render out your text at such a large size. And that also means you save space on your hard drive. So you're saving both space and time, and those are both valuable commodities. And I'm going to show you an example using this layout. I'm going to go ahead and save this as a new layout. I'm going to call it PowerScale pink, and I'm going to just click save, and that took almost no time at all. And then I'll show you the size that that file actually takes up on my hard drive. Here it's saved in the program files, common files, digital juice, shared, fonts, layout, my, and here it is, PowerScale pink DJ layout, 151 kilobytes. So that's saving all the information you need to create this font at whatever size you determine for your canvas. Now if I need this text at a small size, then my render times are pretty small and my file sizes are pretty small. But if I need it at a large size, and if you are working without PowerScale, you might want to create something at a large size so that whatever size you need, you can scale down and have it ready to use for whatever size you need. So if I take this and make it 3000 by 3000, I've created it at this size and I don't have PowerScale, so I'm going to render it out as a PSD with each character on a separate layer so that in the future I can use it for whatever size I want. So I'm going to come over here to Output, choose Layered PSD, choose each character in a separate layer, click OK, and then I'm going to call this PS Large. Now I'm going to set this to render and I'm going to time it. Okay, I've finished my render and I'm going to take a look at the file and see how big it is. My time, when I timed it, it took just over 1.5 minutes. So if I pull up that folder, you can see it's a 54 megabyte file. This is quite a simple layout, so this is at least what you would expect for something 3000 pixels by 3000 pixels. That's really not terrible, but it adds up when you're creating multiple looks for an idea that you've got. So 54 megabytes. Now in the other way of working, you would have this saved as a layout, you've got PowerScale, and when you need it at a larger size, you do your font layout in the juicer, and then all you need to do is render as a PNG when you're ready at the size you require. So let's take a look at the time it takes and the file size if I render this as a PNG instead of as a PSD. Same canvas size, I'm going to hit render and time it as I did before. And my render is complete. And once again, I'm going to take a look at how long it took and the file size. On my stopwatch, it's just over 30 seconds to save this as a PNG at 3000 by 3000. And I'm going to take a look at the folder, and my file size for my PNG is 7.5 megabytes. So about 1/8 of the size of the PSD. So definitely you're saving some space on your hard drive because you can keep the 150 kilobyte saved layout file and then just output to PNG at whatever size you need. You don't need to save the large layered PSD for future use. Okay, up till now we've been talking about some pretty simple text effects and layouts with not much time expended to recreate them, but still with some savings using PowerScale. But here is where you're really going to see the power of PowerScale. Here's a layout that Dave Hebel created and passed to me as a really good example of a complex layout. And it is a good example because it's combination of rotating the letters, adjusting the baseline, adjusting the kerning and the leading in between lines. To actually go in there and edit this to scale it down or scale it up is really time consuming. Trust me, I've tried it. And I would really recreate it at a larger size because it's just too hard to scale it up. So here is PowerScale's power. He created this at 1000 by 1000, not thinking that it would be used for anything larger than that. But say for example I want to use this in a magazine ad for print. This is way too small a resolution to use for print. But with PowerScale, I now have a way to easily scale that up so that I can use it for print. I'm going to go over here and change this to inches and 300 dpi, and I want this to be 10 inches high and 8 inches wide, a typical magazine page size. And I want this to be big enough to take up about half of the page. So I'm going to use PowerScale. I'm just going to click on it and then I'm going to drag the corner. That's roughly about the size that I would want. So this looks good. Double click on it and voila, I have my layout at a larger size. And I can render that out as either a PNG or as a layered PSD and not worry about the resolution. And just like I scaled it up, if I decide I'm going to take out this last word or two here because I want to use it for the web, so I need it smaller, then I can make those edits on my large size that I've got here, and I can then go to PowerScale, scale it down, and then I'm going to apply that. Come over here and change my canvas to pixels again, and I'm going to go down to about 500 pixels by 500 pixels. And I did a pretty good guess of the size I needed here. And there it is at 500 pixels by 500 pixels, and I can use that for the website. Just render it out as a PNG, layered PSD for use on the website. So when you've got multiple projects using the same design at different sizes, then it really pays to use PowerScale, especially when you've got layouts that are this complex and intricate to recreate at a different size. There's one more advantage to using the PowerSCALE plugin and the new Save Layout feature. You can take a layout that you really like, save it, and then use it to build on for a new client, a new project, with a new look. I'm going to show you an example of that. Here we've got the layout that Dave created again, and I'm going to take that and I'm going to change the look of it for a different project. So if I go to Browse DJ Fonts and go to that font, which is volume 42 Snowcap, I'm going to take a look at some of the other looks in that font, some of the other standard fonts. And I want this to have more of a spring feel, so I'm going to come here to the font called Graphic Green, and that's got a real fresh graphic look, and I might need to make a few adjustments because I don't like the transparency here, but overall it's pretty much ready to go with a few adjustments to my line spacing. And then I can apply that and use PowerScale to size it up to a different size if I want to use it in print. That's one way to change the look of your layout, but I haven't changed any of the text. You can also take that layout and change the text, change the look, and use it for something completely different. I was just checking out some of the other fonts here, and I found a font that matches the scaling and spacing almost perfectly to the Snowcap font, and that's volume 52 Soap Bubbles. So I just went in here and found a look that I liked called Screen Door and applied it straight to that other layout, and it's almost perfect. You know, I didn't have to change any of the formatting at all. Then I decided to change the text, and I'm not going to show you how I did that, but I'm just going to open up a layout that I did. So I've opened this layout that I created after applying a new look to the saved layout that I had borrowed from Dave, and I can change the text. I've already changed some of the text here. I can also get rid of this text at the top and adjust my leading a little bit. And I've got something completely different for a different client. And it's also at 4200 by 4200 because I scaled it up using PowerScale because I need this for print, not for the web. So as you can see, I repurposed a layout that I had saved before with a new look for a different client, and both the Save Layout feature and the PowerScale plugin are an integral part of being able to do that. That's it for this tutorial, and I think you can see that once you start going beyond some very simple text formatting with everything the same size, that you really do need the PowerScale plugin because it gives you the flexibility to be able to scale up or down with your saved layouts. Even with your layout that you start at one resolution and decide has to be a higher resolution, it gives you the flexibility to be able to work much faster and easier in the juicer. And it also saves you time and hard drive space because you don't have to go out to Photoshop so much. Anyway, that's it for me. I'll be back with my next tutorial. I'm Jackie Dawson.